Athletor Podcast, Troy Nickerson. Dude, thank you so much for coming on today and being a part of the show. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay. There's so many different things I wanted to talk to you about. First and foremost, I called a couple of your duels this past weekend, and I'm sitting there and I'm going, well, Coach Nickerson's probably been in Northern Colorado for what, 3, 4 years now? No, you've been there for a decade.
Oh yeah.
First of all, I cannot believe that that's the case, but okay. You still look like you're fresh out of college. Um, what's it like spending the last 10 years in Greeley, Colorado? That's number one. Number two, what's it like being a head coach for a decade? Does it seem like that long to you?
It does not, I mean that 10 years has gone by really quick. And it's been a very enjoyable process, right? I mean, I think you know, a lot of people's memory, right? It's so short, right? And they
Hmm.
don't think about, what happened 10 years ago and kind of where we were at. And um this process of trying to build Northern Colorado wrestling into something has been a process. 10 years ago, I was ready. I felt like to be a head coach, and I was willing to take the first opportunity that I was given, right? And this was a job that nobody wanted. I
Yeah,
think,
for sure.
if memory serves me right, I think they offered it to maybe three people. They turned it down before, I finally got a phone call. And, the one thing that I was able to see the bigger picture of that, hey, this is a program that can be something, right? And we may have at the time been the worst program in the country, right? But with time, it's slowly grown into a respectable program, right? And I think with as young as our team is right now, looking into the future, I think the Bears are in a good spot to continue their upward movement.
Yeah. Okay. But so here's the thing. We pretty much solely on this podcast try to stick to the process. The process taking on, and I'm going to be pretty polite here, taking on a up and coming program like Northern Colorado when you took it over, the process is extremely multifaceted. It's not like, oh, just get better at wrestling. There's way more to it than that. So, what in your brain was the process? Like, what was the checklist that you made immediately going, okay, we got to change this, we got to change this, we got to change this?
It was challenging because there was a lot, right? And at the time, 2014, when I took the job, our APR was actually in really bad shape.
Mhm.
So, I mean, we were on the fringe of not even being able to be eligible to compete in the national championship. I think maybe a year or 2 years before, I think it was 2 years before I got here, we could not compete in the postseason because our APR was so bad, right? So, um, in a sense, right, it was initially just trying to change the culture, right? Because
Mhm.
it wasn't like a rebuild where I can kind of come in, get rid of everybody that was here and kind of bring in my guys. The guys I had, I had them, right? They weren't going anywhere. I couldn't get rid of them,
There's
you
no
know.
way to get rid of them.
Yeah, so it was interesting because we really had to change that mindset and change that culture amongst the team. And trying to explain to those guys how, hey, this is bigger than just you, right? This is the start of something special, something that, you know hopefully 10 years down the road, right, you can be proud of that. Hey, you were that first class that got it rolling. And that first couple of years, I mean, that's really what it was just making sure that we brought in good, hardworking, smart kids, right?
Mhm.
And then from there, once we figured out all of our APR issues and got that taken care of, we could start maybe taking a little bit more risk and taking some kids that, maybe had the talent, but maybe didn't have every box checked off, right? And,
Mhm.
and starting to really get some talent in the room. So it's been a long process, but again, I feel like now 10 years later, right, we're in a great spot where we've got a great culture, we've got great athletes, I've got great coaches, and we're really just in a spot where we can take that next step.
Yeah. So, uh, you know, I think the biggest um, green flag, so to speak, for me in terms of Northern Colorado's growth was you signed a hometown boy in Andrew Alirez. Tell me what it meant. Like I mean, everyone knew, it wasn't just you. Everyone in the country knew Boo was special, right? Like pretty early on, right? Um, Tell me what it was like. Like, how did you see it as like a must sign or die type of thing? Because this is a kid that literally lived a mile away from you and grew up right next to your wrestling room. That's as close to I gotta sign this kid or bust as it comes. No,
Yeah, I mean, we joked about it, right? And if things happened differently, I don't know what would have happened, right? But we joked about it, like, hey, if we don't get this kid, like, I don't know, right? I might have to rethink my future a little bit. But no, I mean, it was unique because I mean, when I first got here, it was I'm pretty sure I met Andrew in that first month when I was here, and I'm getting familiar with the area, the community, and I went over to a Greeley Central High School practice, and I'm just getting to know the coaches, the athletes that are around there, and I'm watching practice, and there's some good wrestlers in the room and whatnot. There's good things happening, but I notice over in the corner there's this little kid, right, and he's the best one in the room. It's like who is that? Right. And he's in 8th grade at the time,
sure.
So it was 7th or 8th grade. I can't remember which it was, but you could tell at a very early age that he had it. Right. And, once he went to Fargo and became an All-American, he was able to start training with our RTC and he started coming into our room, and it was more and more and more. And even before all that happened, it was maybe a couple weeks after I'd first met him. I think I was looking out my front door one day and I see Andrew Alirez running down the street. Right. It's like, okay, well, long and behold, he literally lives 5 houses down the street from me. Just, you couldn't have planned it better.
By happenstance.
Just
Yeah.
total coincidence. But, just throughout that entire high school career that he had, I mean, he was in our room. We were developing that relationship. Right. And, he had a very successful high school career. I don't think it was really until his, the end of his junior year, his senior year, where he really took that next step where, hey, I'm elite, right? But we knew as a freshman, this kid is going to be special, right? Just because we were around him so much. And, I think, even if you asked Andrew, I mean, he was like most kids wanting to check out what his options were, and I know there are some schools that, maybe if they recruited him a little harder, we wouldn't have gotten him, right?
Really? You think so? Because I, if I'm going to be honest, like he was on my radar. I'm like, yo, this kid could be and especially because my brain just goes freestyle centric. I'm like, yo, this kid could be the future of 65K. Like he really could be. And I still believe that. But I remember watching him junior trials or junior open, and he's just,
it was the junior world team trials.
That's what it was. Okay.
He
Yeah.
went out there and he had a great tournament. He made the finals. He beat Nick Lee.
Right.
When I think Nick Lee might have already been in college and was an All-American, and it was after that point actually that he turned on everybody's radar and everybody's like, hey, this kid's the real deal. Well, long and behold, he was already committed to us.
Right.
And again, I mean, we've got a great relationship. He told me, he said, hey, so-and-so reached out to me now. I told him to go piss off, right? Like
Really?
I'm a loyal guy. I'm committed. You believed in me since day one. I'm here. Right. So that relationship piece was everything. And, now we're here. He's a national champ and, getting ready for the Olympic trials.
Okay. You're skipping over a lot, Troy Nickerson.
Sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself.
No, it's wonderful. Like what you can't just be like, oh yeah, by the way, signed him and that's it. No. We're going back to that because it's not. It's 2024. Not at the time, but in this era of kids do commit early, they generally don't stick with it. What is it like? What conversations do you have with your assistant coaches going, boy, is this kid as loyal as he says he's going to be? Is this really going to work out? That has to be on the forefront of your mind, right? Because you see it all the time. There are kids that wrestled for teams that you wrestled this weekend that were on campus and decommitted, right? Like Messenbrink was, he has a breakout tournament at the Junior Worlds, and now all of a sudden, yeah, he's going to CBU for a semester, but yeah, he's going to Penn State, right? What does it mean to you to know that it's like you got a kid that's loyal, that's gonna put on the Northern Colorado singlet next year, no matter what?
I mean, it goes a long way. I think it just speaks to our relationship piece, right? Just from the get-go. And I remember when this whole transfer portal stuff first popped up, and initially I didn't know how I felt about it. I was actually probably more against it than not. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure I was at the coaches convention. We're sitting in a meeting, and it was Pat Popolizio, actually. He spoke up and he said, hey, like, I get it, good, bad, indifferent, whatever, however you want to think about it. But he's like, I don't mind it because it really forces us to develop those relationships with our current athletes, right? It's not, hey, we got them, they're here, good or bad, that they're here with us, right? And that really stuck with me, and
Mm.
I think from there on, I mean, it really changed how I deal with even my athletes, right? I mean, turning me, instead of more from a technical perspective, being a technical coach, more into that transformational coach, and getting to know these athletes and really developing those lifelong relationships that ultimately, you've even seen it with Andrew. It's that growing up process and just becoming a man a little bit that made him a national champion. He had the talent when he was a freshman. The talent was there to win a national title as a freshman, but it took him a little bit of growing to actually get it done.
No question about it. You said something there. The world is filled with the wrestling world is filled with guys that want to be technical coaches. It must be all those idiots on the internet doing technique videos. You like that? I got you to chuckle on that one, didn't I? There's irony involved. No, but you said you had to become a transformational coach. How do you go about doing that? How do you what are the boxes you got to check to become a transformational coach? Because that's awesome.
I think the biggest thing is really, it starts with building that relationship with those athletes, but it's really breaking down what the barriers are. Um, you know, I think motivation is huge, right, within any sport. And I think when you can really get to the core of what motivates an individual, right? I don't care what it is, right? In today's world, it might be, hey, kids want to make money, the NIL deals, right? And once I think you find that whatever
I
that
found a kid that
motivation is,
wants to be TikTok famous. Like he's
yeah,
like legit. Like that's like I'm like for real. All right, cool. Let's do it. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, and I think that's fine, right? But once you find out what that true motivation is, you need to gear towards it in a sense that, hey, if this is the goal, right, here are the steps to get there, right? And I think this generation particularly, I mean, they struggle with failure big time, right?
Mm,
And I feel like I know what I'm doing as a coach, right?
mm.
If it's just X's and O's and, hey, you're gonna run through a wall. If I say run through a wall, right, I can make you a national champ. But I think an important life lesson for all these student athletes is you can lead them to water, but you can't make them drink, right? And being able to have them fail along that path to success, I think it's critically important, right? Because that's when you're going to get their true self to come out and really decide, hey, do I really want to do this, or would I just like to do this? And once you can get through to them in that side, it makes coaching way more fun, right? Just because, I mean, they're totally bought in. They're totally bought in. And, I tell this story a lot recently. It's about Andrew even, right? And it was last year before the semifinals of the national tournament. All year he wanted to warm up with me, so I got the lucky draw of being his warm up dummy. That was fun.
Good
But
times.
yeah, anyways, before the match, I mean, we've done the same thing, right? He's very consistent. He has a process. We know, he knows exactly what he's doing for his warm up, for his meal prep, for his, you know, um, pre-match warm-up, day before, the whole works. Everything is structured.
Sure.
And I said to him before his semifinal match, it's like, hey, what do you want to do? Right? What do you need? Right? And again, we've been in that situation before, right? You're going to do the same thing you always do. And, he just said, whatever you think. Right? I could have told him, hey, we're going to do a 45-minute grind match. Right? And he wouldn't have questioned it at all. Right? He just would have blindly followed. And that's that type of trust that you're trying to instill in these athletes, to say, hey, I'm willing to do whatever it takes, right? Just tell me.
Yeah.
You talk a lot about kind of trust and buy-in, and how impactful that is to helping you to, help to transform and kind of take that next step. I'm curious how you kind of got that buy-in, both from administration and from kind of the wrestlers, when you first got to Northern Colorado and weren't seeing the results that, that is natural to not see when you first take over a job.
I mean, it's just education, really, right? I mean, I think, I'm very fortunate to have a great administration here that, does know wrestling, right? It's not just kind of an afterthought. But they knew where we were at, right? I helped them understand where we were at, what it was going to take to take those necessary steps forward. And there was going to be growing pains along the way, right? And I think when you can just kind of
can we pause it? I'm sorry. Can we pause it right there, Troy? That's freaking brilliant. Like, I don't think enough coaches around this country look at the administration as an entity that needs to be educated. And they should. Like, no, this is where we're at, and here's why we're at this point. Here's where we'd like to be, and here's how we're going to get there. I think if more coaches around the country took the time, and me included, like I had a small college job, and I looked at the administration as my enemy. Honest to goodness, man, every single day. I would walk in there with butterflies, like I was going into a fight every single day. Man, I hadn't thought about that. That is absolutely brilliant. I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
No, I mean, it really is critical, right? Just because, I became a coach because I want to impact, young men's lives, right? That was why I became a coach. But really, at the end of the day, what I'm doing, I'm running a business, right? And if you look at, say, some Fortune 500 company out there, right? They have shareholder meetings, right? They're doing the same thing. They're explaining, hey, this is where we're at. This is where we want to be. This is how we get there, right? So I run my program as a business, right? And it has to be that way. And if I think you're starting to see coaches kind of figure that out and take that next step. And once we get complete buy-in from it, I think it's really going to help revolutionize the sport, because sport is a business.
Yeah. And I don't think that you could get a better mentor in that department than Rob Koll. Am I crazy for saying that?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, again, a lot of what I've, learned throughout the years and trying to develop my coaching philosophy and my style, a lot of it has come from him, right? I mean, I say it all the time. I mean, two of the guys that I've coached under are Rob, who is probably the best, CEO of a program in the country. And then, I spent 2.5 years at Iowa State with Kevin Jackson, who, in my opinion, is probably the best technical coach in the country. Right. So I was very fortunate to have both of those guys in my life who really helped mold what I'm doing here today. And yeah, I mean, those guys both, right, they make me want to do what I do on a daily basis.
That all said, what do you wish you had more of at Northern Colorado? Because and forgive me if I'm putting you in a bit of a hot seat, but I really think that while your Northern Colorado is not where you want it to be, it's certainly at a point where it's better than it was. And I think that a lot of the things that you have to deal with are the same things that a Damian Hahn has to deal with at SDSU, and that Obi now probably has to deal with at North Dakota State. Maybe a little bit different there, but I guess what I'm trying to say is, what do you wish that a school like Northern Colorado gave you more of
I mean, there's a lot, right? I mean,
Sure.
there's a lot. I mean, really, college athletics in general it's an arms race today, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's even in the 10 years that I've been here, it has changed dramatically, right? Um, I don't know if it's possible um, for a program like a Northern Colorado to really be a consistent trophy contending team, right? You
Mm.
know, it's just it's hard, right? It's really hard with the resources today, and we've been able to put ourselves in that position where, I mean, right now my team, I've got all sophomores and freshmen wrestling for me, right? We are
Mhm.
extremely young, you know, and next year we get Andrew Alirez back. So,
Mhm.
you know, to be in the position that we're going to be in here in the near future, we've had to do a lot with a little. And I've really never been one to, you know, play that poor me card.
No,
You know, I think we've really done a good job of trying to make Northern Colorado probably look a little better than it is on paper,
sure.
to be honest, right? You
Yeah.
know, but that's just, I don't want to play that victim card of, you know, hey, poor me, we don't have this, we don't have that. To me, we have what we have, and we're going to do the best we can with it. So, um, of course, we always want more, right? I mean, I would love to be fully funded scholarship wise. I would love to have a full coaching staff, right? But it is what it is, and we're going to make the most of what we have.
How many scholarships does Northern Colorado have?
We've got about 7.5 right now.
Okay. So you're just off of the 9.9, but when you took over, was it still 7.5?
It was 5.5 when I got here.
I knew the answer to the question. That's why
Yeah.
I asked it.
So we've grown, you know, and again, I mean, I'm very fortunate because we actually have a great alumni and donor base here, you know, that we've been able to use to capitalize on us. We have an $11 million endowment for wrestling here right now. We are self-sufficient. We make money for the university, which is extremely important in today's world, right? Because, you know, you look at some of these mid-major type of programs and the direction that college athletics is going, it could be a little scary, you know,
Oh
but
yeah. Oh
um,
yeah.
again, I mean, my administration knows the value of wrestling to the athletic department here. We make money for the school, right? Wrestling isn't going anywhere here, right? And that's something that we've made a conscious effort to make sure happens. And again, we're fortunate in those ways.
How do
I'm
you judge
curious.
success? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm curious, how many other Division I programs, or really any college programs, wrestling specifically, are cash flow positive like you guys, do you think?
Probably not many. Probably not many. Um, yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I'd say probably not many.
Not many is putting it pretty lightly too. I'd say I've been around a lot of programs. I'd say 5% is probably about right, Joel. You know, and I know you wanted to hear Coach Nickerson say that, but yeah, I'd say 5% if I had to guess. So, but if you don't think that not just UNC and not just the Big 12, you know, the mid majors in the Big 12, like the annex programs, like how do you judge success if you don't think that you're gonna contend? Because freaking, first of all, contending for a trophy just got a lot harder because they took one away. Just bananas to me. But okay, whatever. But then you look at a revenue stream and a budget the size of Michigan's, and they're not getting a trophy every year. Like,
Right.
okay, so if they have that budget and they're not getting a trophy every year, how do you judge success? How do you tell your administration, okay, here's what we're going to be successful in, and here's how we're going to do it? How do you call your shots then?
For me, it's just, you know, again, I mean, I've got vision plans, right? You know, 1, 5, 10 years, you know, every year I redo them and kind of reevaluate where we're at as a program. And um, over the past 9 years, I feel like every year our program has gotten better, you know, and some years it's very minute. It is small, right? But we're still moving forward, and we haven't had that dip, right? And at this point in my career, right, I've been here 10 years, you know, it drives me nuts when you hear coaches say, we're rebuilding, right? When you've been at a place long enough, there's no more rebuilding, right? It should be just reloading, right? Otherwise, you're just not managing, your roster and things like that appropriately. So as long as we continue to move in the right direction, I'm not sure what our ceiling is, right? I don't know what that looks like, but as we continue up that mountain, we're going to take it as far as we can.
Yeah. That's a pretty cool thing because the baseline gets higher. The bar gets higher every year. And what would you say to a new coach taking over a program that doesn't know exactly he has the 10-year goal, but I think a lot of the guys that are taking over the programs lack they don't lack the vision because everyone kind of has pretty close to the same vision. But I think what happens is they don't have the steps in place to get there very well. How would you talk to a young coach taking over a smaller mid-major type program? How would you tell him to attack his first 2 years or 3 years at a program?
I would say know what you want to expect out of your athletes and be consistent. I feel like early on in my coaching career, we're all human. We all make mistakes, right? I was probably a little too lenient with athletes and, just giving too many chances, whether it's academics or school or a social issue or whatever the case may be on, what it takes to be a part of the program and be successful in the program. Right. And I would say just be consistent, right? And know what your values are, know what your expectation is and stick to it. Right. And then the last thing would just be patient, right? Because I certainly didn't think it would take 10 years to get to where we're at today. Right. I thought maybe half this time, but it takes what it takes. And again, I'm just grateful to be in the spot that we're in because it's taken a lot of time and hard work. And when you see that the fruits of your labor in a sense, right, it's just that much more gratifying.
Well, I think what people don't realize, because Cornell has built itself to the point where the Friedman Center is the high water mark as far as facilities go, and they're putting guys not only on the podium at the NCAA's, but also at the international level, and they're consistently getting some of the best recruits in the country at Cornell. I don't think that people really understand how bad Cornell was before Rob Koll got there. Like when I was going to school, we were at a junior college, and it was okay. Like if we drew a Cornell guy first round, it wasn't the worst thing, right? Like you didn't want some of those Lock Havens and you did that kind of stuff, but it was okay. What did you? All that to say this: Rob Koll built Cornell wrestling into what it is today. What are the two biggest things that you took away from him as a mentor and as a person in the sport that is probably the best CEO? What are the two things that you took away from him as a coach to build a program from literally nothing to what it is today?
Oh my gosh. That could be a whole conversation just in and of itself.
I got some time, Troy Nickerson. Right ahead, sir.
I mean, there's so much, right? But I think just, the way he handles business and, the donor relations and, recruiting athletes, I think it's ever evolving, right? And you have to adapt with the times, and I think, what I saw when I was at Cornell compared to today, I mean, it seems like it's a different planet almost, where you're at. But, speaking in today's terms, right, I think, the biggest piece for us to have success is having the right athletes within our program, right? I think you're starting to see, and it's very evident now when you see these high school kids out beating, some of the top college wrestlers in the country, right? The talent level is is so top heavy right now that winners win, right? And if you're not getting that top level talent, I'm not saying that you can't develop kids, right? Because kids will continue to develop, and maybe more so in other areas outside of the wrestling room. But if you don't have the top talent, it's really hard to win.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
You got
talked
to get the
about,
horses.
you kind of talked about adapting to the times. What do you think are some of the biggest adaptations that a coach today might need to think about? I mean, obviously there's NIL, but anything that doesn't, you know, jump out that most people aren't thinking about?
Um, just how to communicate even with these athletes, right? We talked about just the talent level, right? Just again, it's harder and harder to develop that talent than it is just to recruit it. But just being able to communicate with them different. These kids today, I mean, I still don't feel like I'm that old, right? But I feel like I'm on another planet than some of these kids, and just how they were brought up, and just values and things like that. So just being able to communicate with them as to why you're doing what you're doing, and what the long-term vision is, where it's going to take them, because they do ask more questions. They do want to know the why, that, and you have to be a little bit more patient with them. Right. And I think there's, sometimes as coaches, right, we can be really hard-headed and say, hey, this is the way, do it or don't. And I think one thing this job has taught me a lot of is just that patience, and just being able to, hey, I might have to repeat myself 10 times, right? And he still might not figure it out. But as long as we're continuing to move in that right direction, we're going to get there.
Yeah. That's, yeah, that's interesting. You know who it's really interesting for? Because you still are one of the younger head coaches around the country. It's really interesting for guys that have been at this since 1992 that might happen to be in your conference. Do you talk to some of the older head coaches? And
Absolutely.
and I know that I'm going to tread lightly here. I know that guys like you almost always look to learn from the older head coaches, but do you ever sit there and go, oh boy, he's missing it, right? Because here's what happens, man. Like a lot of this sport changes, and the relationships that you have with kids are not the same. So talk to me a little bit about some of the misses that you see some of the older head coaches making right now. Not that you have to call anyone out, and I probably shouldn't have divulged that much, but here's the thing. There's a lot of head coaches out there right now that don't know how to communicate with their athletes. And how would you, not that you're going to go give that person advice, because, but how would you talk to them if you could have a candid conversation, be like, hey, look, man, I know you have no interest in social media, but these kids do, or something along those lines. What area of the relationship would you expect the best head coaches to get better at?
I mean, I feel like there's a lot of them, right? I think it's just a lot of the same stuff that we've been talking about. The one thing I feel like I'm grateful for is, I don't feel like there's a coach in the country that I can't call and ask a question, right? Hey, why are you doing things this way? Or hey, explain to me how you're doing this. That they're gonna take it as, hey, this is, deepest, darkest secret, and I'm not going to tell you, because I'm just that competitive and I don't want to win, right? I've got some great mentors out there. I mean, guys that have coached a long time ago to guys that are still coaching today, right? And I feel like most of them out there, I can ask them anything, and they're going to be straight up with me, right? And if somebody called me and asked me, I'd do the same thing, right? And I think that's my responsibility as not just trying to be the ultimate competitor and hey, screw the rest of you, right? You forget about yourselves, but it's continuing to grow the sport, right? And if we can all get better, then the sport's going to continue to grow. And again, I mean, I am young. I have a lot of time left in this game. I am looking big picture because, I want to have a job in 20 years. So it's, it's about the bigger picture for me, and just trying to make the sport better as a whole. And again, I feel like if we're doing what we need to do, we're still going to find success in that.
You say you want to still have a job in 20 years. How do you think the sport will look different 20 years from now?
I wish I had a magic 8 ball and could tell you. I have no idea. I mean, if you told me 10 years ago this is where we'd be at today, I would have said you're crazy. Um, who knows, right? I mean, it is what it is. Like I said, this job has taught me a lot about patience, and um, sometimes you need to be the change, but sometimes you need to just go with the change, right? And I think um, one thing I've gotten a lot better at is just knowing that, hey, I don't have all the answers, right? Even with my athletes at times, right? I might make a mistake, right? I'm human. That's going to happen, right? But as long as I know in my heart that I'm doing the best I can, right, to build this program in the right way, I might royally screw it up, but hey, I'm doing everything that I can, and that's all I can really expect out of myself.
Can we switch gears a little bit to the X's and O's of the sport real quick? Because, a lot of times when you see a head coach that was as successful as you were as an athlete, they have a tendency to try to impose their style of wrestling on their young athletes. Now, I don't think that Northern Colorado was bad on top, but you were an absolute hammer on top. Is it fight against your nature to not like spend every second of the day just mat returning and tilting and stuff like that?
Not really, because again, I mean, I'm aware of the fact that these guys are not me, right? And there's certain individuals that we have in our room, right? That where, hey, they might be the only guy that's going to do this, right? And I'm going to tell them to do something that, hey, the rest of you don't even think about it, right? But my job is to cater to them, right? They have their skill set. They're already coming in with a very high skill set. I want to make them the best version of themselves. I'm not going to try to change them into something they're not. So for me, the technical side, it's really all over the place. And again, I mean, are there certain things that we look for, in the recruiting process that we want to see that each and every individual athlete can do? Absolutely. But
Sure.
I mean, you look at my current team, right? I mean, we've got guys all over the place, right? You've got your fast, explosive guys like Andrew Alirez, and then you have Vinny Zervin, who, like, he's going to scramble for 7 minutes, right? So both ways, in my mind, are being pretty successful right now. So, I think it's our job to cater to them.
Yeah, Zervin's a fun one. Tell me what it was like recruiting him, because he wasn't the blue chip recruit coming out of high school. I mean, don't get me wrong, he had a nice high school career, but Andrew, I think was when you landed Andrew, I think it kind of put Northern Colorado on the map. Zervin is somebody that it looks as though you're developing in house. What was it like? What were the conversations like with Zervin, getting him to really?
Yeah, his recruiting process was very unique. I think maybe as a junior, I think he was committed to Illinois, and he decommitted, and we he decided when he decommitted he was going to go join the EAP program at the Olympic Training Center, and we kept recruiting him that entire time. And again, at the time it was right during COVID, and Kevin Jackson was still down at the Olympic Training Center, who I have a great relationship with. And, I would just ask Kevin, is this program happening? Right? I don't know. Right? I'm like, Vinny, you sure? Like, I don't think it's happening, dude. Right? So we just stayed on throughout that entire time. Right? He was committed. I'm going to the EAP. I'm doing this, doing that. Finally, it was August, and before his senior, or August after his senior year.
Right.
And I finally got that call from KJ, and he said, hey, it's not happening 100%. And I'm pretty sure I was on the next flight to St. Louis to go see Vinny,
Oh, really?
And,
Yeah.
We went out, we did a home visit. We brought him to campus a couple days later. Basically he committed, and a week later he's in school. Right. So it was really fast. But
that's pretty fast.
Yeah, it was really fast. But again, I mean, he was one of those guys where, to me, being able to identify talent, that's the easy part, right? I mean, I feel like I can identify talent watching a kid wrestle for 30 seconds, right? It's not hard at this level, but sometimes maybe that kid isn't, again, Vinny was very good in high school. He wasn't elite, right? But you could tell he had those capabilities where if he could hone in his skills, he could be very special, right? And we saw that in him all along. And again, he's come in here, he's really grown up as a young man. Last year, kind of an up and down year of, you knew he was there, right? He could wrestle with the best guys, but it was also part of how his schedule worked out, right? Where he would either see a top 10, 15 guy in the country or an unranked guy, right? He never got anybody from that 15 to 30 range that he wrestled all season. And it made things really challenging for him, right? And, he ends up having a rough Big 12 tournament and needs a wild card to get into the national tournament, right? And it was probably his win over Levi Haynes early in that season that put him into the tournament. And I think he was the 32 seed at nationals, and he goes on and he makes a big run to the round of 12, which we knew he was capable of all along. And then this year he's taken another step, right? Where, I mean, he looks absolutely phenomenal. I think he's in a good position to put himself.
I just don't know how you score on a doggone kid. Like, it's not easy to score on him, man.
Yeah.
Look, so we're running out of time, but I got one more question before we get to our quick hits. What skills do you look for in that diamond in the rough? What skills do you look for in a high school athlete that you go, okay, well, he's not elite yet, but if he just brings this in, he can be elite?
Yeah, I mean, I think effort and pace go a long way, right? I think it drives me nuts when you see high school kids, especially, taking the injury times and things like that, right? I mean, you can't get away with that in college, right? You just can't. So you got to be able to have a gas tank and wrestle hard for 7 minutes. You got to have a go-to leg attack, right? I don't care what it is, single, double, high C, whatever. You got to be able to go get somebody's leg, right? We can work on, hey, if they struggle finishing, or hey, their sets are a little off, but you got to be able to cover distance and go get a leg. You got to be somewhat decent on top. You got to be able to ride somebody for at least 30 seconds, right? I'm partial to leg riders, right? Just because there are athletes that struggle with legs, right? So that's a plus. And then, really on bottom, you've got to be able to fire up and get away, right? If you're laying on bottom in high school, it's going to be real hard in college. It's going to be real hard.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those are the basics. I mean, obviously we're looking for, solid defensive skills, head, hands, defense, things like that. But I mean, in a nutshell, those are the three main areas that we're looking for.
That's awesome. Okay. Joel, do you have anything else before we get to our usuals? All right. You ready for these, Mr. Nickerson?
Yeah. Hit me with it.
All right. Best wrestling shoe ever.
Oh gosh. I like the old school, ASICS Supreme Light Flex. That was my go-to.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah. Maybe a little unorthodox, but I liked them.
Best shoe. That's my all-time as well.
Really?
Oh yeah.
That's yours. Okay. All right. You and Joel Shaw. Okay. Is it better to be, and we haven't asked this one in a couple weeks, is it better to be a long, lanky, flexible wrestler or a short, stocky, powerful wrestler?
Oh gosh. To me, again, it's one of those things like you can't really control, right? You can transform.
Yeah, but if you're going to recruit somebody, I'm going to
recruit a guy,
you got two different guys.
Oh gosh.
Same weight class.
Give me the long, lanky guy.
Yeah? How come?
Yeah. Those are the guys I struggled with.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, get them off of me. Get them off me. Okay, fair enough. If you had a magic wand and you could change one thing about the sport of wrestling at any level, what would it be?
Get rid of ankle bands. It is so silly.
Yes. You're the second person to say that. You're the second.
Especially
It's so ridiculous.
If you can't
Why
tell
are we
this,
doing this?
come on. What are we doing?
That's so fantastic. Oh, that's so good. Okay, last one. Ready? Who is on the Mount Rushmore of wrestling?
Oh gosh. Holy smokes. Oh, that is a tough one. We talking college wrestling?
No. Any
Just wrestling in general.
yeah.
Any US wrestlers?
Any
Yes.
US wrestlers. Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, I think you got to go Dan Gable,
Mhm.
right? He's got to be up there.
Mhm.
Let's say, I mean, I think you got to put Kale up there. You know,
Okay.
what he did is just incredible. I don't know if it'll ever be done again. Oh man, there's so many guys. I mean, talking overall career.
See, that's the interesting part of this question is everyone interprets it differently. So
Okay.
however you would interpret.
Okay, so I'll put one guy on there just because of a year or two that he had,
Oh.
or maybe a few more than that. But Les Gutchess
Oh, wow.
in college
Nice.
was, I don't think he got scored on for like 2 years. Was incredible.
Just lights out. I didn't know that.
Yes. And then last one, we'll go. He's not there yet, but I'm going to put him up there because he's going to be really soon. Is Kyle Dake?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Look, man, I have a hard time arguing Kyle Dake is and you know what? The era of wrestling that we're in, we might just have to revamp Rushmore altogether because David Taylor and Jordan Burroughs. I mean, let's call it what it is. This is the greatest wrestling in the United States has ever seen. Like, period. The end. Like, consistently, these guys are unbelievable. We're so spoiled right now with world championships. It's unreal. Like, these guys are so good. So good. Anyway, okay. Thank you so much for giving us your time. I know you're super busy, and I'm sure the travel is a nightmare at this time of the year, especially coming out of Colorado. Thank you again for coming on, and we appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me.
All right, Coach. Talk to you soon.